Super Bowl week in the Big Easy for the biggest sporting event each and every year, the biggest game of every NFL season. It is Super Bowl 59 that features Kevin Walsh's Birds, but the most unbiased man in sports media. We'll break it down as is necessary in the Kansas City Chiefs as well. Kev, KC, a slight 1.5 favorite, minus 126 on the money line as we are here on this Monday morning, officially now in Super Bowl week. Total remains at 48.5. You are boots on the ground in the Big Easy. You will be hearing from so many different perspectives getting ready for Super Bowl 59 in these coming days. But as you look at those numbers, where do you expect these odds to move, if at all, by the time we get to Super Bowl Sunday, now just 6 days out?
It's a great question. I still would imagine that it would be more Kansas City bets as we get closer and closer to this game. I think that the Chiefs pushed a lot of people over the edge with the win against Buffalo. I heard people say, it's between the Bills and the Ravens as the two best teams in football. Obviously, that drives me completely insane. The Eagles went to Baltimore, beat that team, beat them pretty handedly. I don't think anybody watches the Eagles sometimes based on the conversations that we have, but maybe neither here nor there. I just expect there to still be a wealth of Kansas City money that pours in because it's Mahomes. The thing is, and I'm going to try and do this with as much respect as I can, even some of the brightest minds see a Chiefs game and go, well, they got Mahomes. That's not a breakdown. But apparently it is because they just keep winning. So maybe it is a breakdown. But if that's the breakdown that you're getting from the top end of it, well, then everybody who's just going to show up to the window come Super Bowl Sunday will go, yeah, the Chiefs will win the game. And then I imagine we can maybe get closer to -2, a money line of minus 134, minus 139, if you will.
Can you make the argument, and I've been saying it all week, Kev, the wrong team is favored here, is it not? I mean, call me crazy. I can make the argument that the Eagles should be the favorites here on a neutral site, no?
Yeah, I mean, I won't call you crazy. I'll call you somebody who's clearly watching some Birds football, and we'd love to see that for you, Joe, quite frankly. The Philadelphia Eagles have had people leading the conversations with, hey, what's wrong with the offense? And they are 26 points away, I think, for tying the most points ever scored by a team.
Oh, that was fun. That was good.
Sometimes it happens in New Orleans.
That's a Kansas City fan. A Kansas City fan.
Somebody
That's
came
what
in,
it was. Yeah.
knocked on Kevin's hotel room and said, get this guy Walsh off of here if he's going to consider the Eagles are actually the favorites. I believe Kevin's back.
Can I tell you something? Now, we're all friends here. You might think, what went wrong, right? Internet could be the hotel. No. Lisi, Joe. Lisi's calling me. Mid-segment. Told him I was doing this. He knows. So, I mean.
He's not going to eat breakfast. I mean. What?
He might be. He might be.
Plates
I was
full
just
of
saying.
bacon and sausage. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, exclusively. I will say, I will throw this out there to people because obviously I do think the Eagles are the best team in football. I've been saying it for a long time. I'll throw people some old school spread math out there. Kansas City was supposed to be a 1.5-point home underdog to Baltimore. Philadelphia went to Baltimore. It's just a 3.5-point dog. Again, it's not a massive gap, but that would pretty much suggest that Philly should be -1 here. I think Joe's right. And I think the reason that Kansas City is a favorite in this game is not – see, I think the wrong team is favored, but I don't blame them one bit because I think that if you put a plus sign next to Kansas City again, you would have a big issue on your hands.
2 of the 5 best scoring defenses, Kev, in the NFL. 2 of 5 defenses allowing fewer than 20 points per game all year long. And we have seen the total work its way down now to 48.5. Just how much scoring do you anticipate seeing in the Big Easy?
I have played under at 49.5. I wasn't actually thinking it would hit down to 48.5, so I'm glad I did. Not that I think that's necessarily going to make all the difference in the world. I would anticipate this number could tick back up. I think this game is more so in the mid-40s. Kansas City is coming off their season-high points. Obviously, Philadelphia is also coming off of their season-high point. So I think you have a bit of a sell-high spot when you try and evaluate this total for both football teams.
the Eagles the best defense all year long? You want to say Patrick Mahomes? Maybe you should also say Steve Spagnuolo as one of the reasons the Chiefs continue on this dynastic run. Kev, go meet Lisi for breakfast. Enjoy this
He's
morning
knocking
in the
at
Big
my
Easy.
door.
Yeah, I'm sure he probably is. Have a great Super Bowl week, my friend. We will see you very, very soon. More on the other side.
Yeah, I'm coming!
So, Kevin Walsh had to go, of course. Joe Lisi and Donnie Rightside banging at his door to get to Caesars Superdome or wherever Radio Row is in New Orleans. But it is Super Bowl week in the Big Easy. Plenty of SportsGrid coverage coming your way from New Orleans all week long. We'll have it here on the early line as well. Videos, interviews, the PFT crew breaking things down ahead of the biggest game each and every NFL season. And Joe, this is a fun time because it is Super Bowl week. Last week, we talked about the game from every single angle, trying to bring you all of the necessary approaches to how the biggest game of a season is going to be constructed. We're going to do a lot of the same things this week, but maybe we'll start to see some movement. It is actually a game week. We are going to get more practice reports. How healthy are these two sides entering Super Bowl 59? So, it is the start of Super Bowl week, and here are the numbers once again. Kansas City remains a 1.5 favorite. -126 at the money line. It's been as low as -124. That's 2 pennies. It's been as high as -130 in favor of Kansas City. We have basically fluctuated in this nickel or dime sense on the money line for the last week. Total still 48.5, where it dropped to late last week as well. Joe, as you look at these numbers now in Super Bowl week, and all of your friends start to hit you up, Ranieri, we need some bets for the biggest game, man. What do you like? What are you thinking? What do you know? How are you trying to advise people to best bet Super Bowl 59?
Well, I was making the case with Kevin there about I think maybe the wrong team is favored, but he's got a point as well, is that the books can't put a plus number next to the Chiefs. It won't be there very long. Let's face it here. The money will come rolling in on Kansas City if anybody sees Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid as a dog. And let's not forget, they're the champs until somebody beats them. And forget about all they're going for history and nobody's ever won 3 in a row. Listen, they're here. They have an opportunity to make history here and cement themselves as one of the greatest franchises and one of the greatest runs in all of NFL history. And that is saying something in this day and age. However, this has not been the most talented Chiefs team. And while they do have an edge at quarterback because of Patrick Mahomes and even coaching with Spags and Andy Reid, they don't have the better offensive line. They don't have the better defense. And they don't have the better running game. In fact, they have no running game. And usually what happens in games like this, Ben, is that the one who has more checks next to their name regarding running, defense, offensive line, well, that's usually the team, Ben, that ends up coming out on top in these one-off situations here. And that's why I think, you can get a plus number right now at Philadelphia, and I think that's where all the value lies right now.
-124 now on the FanDuel Sportsbook, plus 106 on the other side for the Eagles. And Joe, when you really start to compare these two teams, you go up and down the list. Coach, quarterback, running backs, skill positions, offensive line, defense as a whole. You really do make those check marks, those pro and con lists to compare these two teams, because you can see how tight the margin is to see who might hold those slight matchup advantages that could dictate the outcome. I don't think anybody is predicting this game to be lopsided, to decided by 2 touchdowns. I think we all think that on either side, it's going to be a one-possession game. It's going to probably be a field goal or a touchdown. More than likely, it comes down to the final few minutes of that fourth and final quarter of this NFL season. Now, we'll get back to comparing these two teams in just a moment. I do just want to mention the numbers because, Joe, at the end of Championship Sunday, when this line opened up for our Super Bowl 59 matchup, second time in the last 3 years, Chiefs and the Eagles, it was -130 on the money line. And around 57% of the bets, or 57% of the money, on the spread at a 1.5 were backing Kansas City on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Around 54% of the bets on the spread were backing Kansas City on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Those numbers right now have dropped, not by 10 percentage points, but by a few. 54% of the money on the spread backing the Chiefs, only 51% of the bets. So just know that, because there might be the public sentiment. It's still Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and they're looking for a third consecutive Super Bowl championship, so you have to bet the Chiefs. The public bets, or at least some of the bets that we are seeing in the overall quantity on FanDuel, are now starting to skew, at least in the last 5 to 7 days, on Philadelphia. And those numbers, Joe, will be important to pay attention to on our lovely sponsor, the FanDuel Sportsbook, in this 6-day stretch until Super Bowl Sunday. Because if they start to back the Eagles and the Chiefs remain the favorites, are those the odds makers telling us, hey, we just can't make KC a dog once again for a Super Bowl? Or is that the odds maker telling us, hey, Kansas City is actually the right and correctly favored side, despite the public starting to buy in to the Birds? All of these numbers in a game with this short of a margin have to be noted this week in the lead up to Super Bowl 59.
Well, listen, I think if from a book perspective, Ben, my goal is to not have a ton of liability on one side or the other, right?
True.
Yeah, so this game, from many aspects, is a pick 'em in people's minds. I don't think the line is going to move a whole lot one way or the other, simply because I believe there's going to be enough two-way action on this game. There usually is, unless this is some sort of big -4, -5, something over a field goal. But the reality is it's the two best teams left standing in the NFL. I think what you see is what you get. I don't think it'll ever get to, I don't think enough Chiefs money will come in to force FanDuel to push it to -2, thus creating a +8 for the Eagles and a teaser. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the biggest question mark in this game, as far as the line movement is going to go, is going to come on the total, because we all know that the public loves overs, and they will bet the over on Saturday and all morning Sunday. The question is, how much higher does it go? Because there's been nothing but under money in so far.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the total and dive into that in just a little bit in our next segment. We'll focus on where that next big move for the odds for Super Bowl 59 comes. When is it going to happen? Where does it happen? Much like Joe, I think it's more about our over-under and not necessarily the spread or the money line. At least on FanDuel, Joe, I expect the numbers to look pretty similar to what they do, a couple of cents here and there. 1.5 is still where I expect that closing spread to be as we get to kick just 6 days from now, around 6:30 p.m. Eastern time in New Orleans inside the Caesars Superdome. But one of the great things, Joe, much to the public's chagrin, that we are seeing the same Super Bowl matchup for a second time in 3 years, is we have the Chiefs, who are now playing in their 5th Super Bowl in the last 7 seasons, and the Eagles, second time in a 3-year window. We have data points. We have sample size. We have comparison between these two in this similar stage and matchup. Joe, I think back in Super Bowl 57 to end out 2022 in Glendale, I think it was pretty easy to say the Eagles were the more talented team, but you still had Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Do you feel about the same way here entering Super Bowl 59?
Listen, the thing that worries me the most about the Chiefs is, and Philadelphia knows that if you're going to do this, you need to step on them. You need to make sure they can't come back here, Ben. This can't be a one-score game with 3 minutes left to go in a game and Mahomes has the ball. You just can't. So they are going to have the game of their life where they're going to put them down. They're going to make it so they can't come back. That's how you win this game if you're Philadelphia.
And everybody around the NFL for the last 7 years that Mahomes has been the starter in KC has tried to figure out that blueprint. How do we beat the Chiefs? Does it mean scoring or a defensive stifling effort? We'll talk the total next. A couple of cents here and there on the money line. Kansas City has remained a 1.5 favorite on the spread for Super Bowl 59. The one big move, if you want to call it that, in the week before, now Super Bowl week that we saw from an odds perspective, was that total. 49.5 at open, now 48 in a hook. Joe, you said it before the break. Pretty much all the money right now has been on the under. Where do you think this number closes 6 days from this very moment come Super Bowl Sunday?
Yeah, I think this number will rise, Ben, over the weekend, beginning on Saturday, once the public gets paid on Friday, runs to the window and starts getting real excited on Saturday, and then, of course, on Sunday. But there is going to come a point, Ben, and listen, I can see this going to 49.5, maybe 50, because I do believe there's going to be an overwhelming amount of liability for the books on the over. But I do also believe that the professionals, the big money bets right now, are sitting on the sideline because there's no reason, Ben, for them to get involved in this total right now, because they know and we know it's only going to go one way. It's only going to go up. And if this is all about getting the best number, if you're thinking about betting the under, wait. There is no rush for you to run to the window, because the public is not going to push this thing to 48, 47 and a half. It's only going to go up come kickoff. So the question is, and I think there's going to be a mad dash of professional money late on Sunday before kickoff trying to hammer that under. So get it while you can. If you're looking at the over right now would probably be a good time to bet it, because I think come Sunday kickoff time, 5 o'clock, this thing, it could, all the under money will start pouring in here. But I do think it gets close to 50 before it's all said and done.
I would agree. I think we get back to 49.5, maybe even 50-50 in a hook in some spots, depending on how much money in bets we see. I think if you wanted to bet the under at 49.5 when it opened, good job on you.
Great.
You might get another chance, and now might be your time to bet the over. So that's where the market is going to go, Joe. But we have two of the best defenses in the NFL. Philadelphia is the best defense all year long around the National Football League, led by a very bright mind in Vic Fangio. Steve Spagnuolo is hoping for his 5th Super Bowl ring, his 4th in Kansas City as the Chiefs' DC. And maybe that's kind of a lost part of this conversation. We look at Andy Reid, we look at Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and the casting crew that has been there on this dynastic run. You know, Spagnuolo's first year in KC, 2019, when they first reached a Super Bowl. So, Joe, when we look at this Chiefs team, when we look at this Eagles team, there's a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball. There is no doubt about it. But you could argue that both of these teams are here playing in a Super Bowl led by their defenses. So if the market ends up at 49.5 or 50, or if we even stay at 48 and a hook, what would you bet in terms of an over or an under for Super Bowl 59?
I think it's going to be somewhere in between, Ben, to be completely honest with you. And don't forget, if you remember the last time these teams played, Ben, remember they exploded for points early in the game. I think it was 38 first half points. As you can see on there, the first half line, 24.5. There is no way I think we get over 24.5 points in the first half. I think this is going to be a first one to 24-27 wins. I think that's where we're going. So I'm thinking 45 to 47 points is where this is ultimately going to be, somewhere in that ballpark there. All of it leads me to unders early and unders late, because as this game moves along, it's the question is, can the Eagles defense handle that, whatever you want to call it, X factor, mojo? Can they handle it in the third and fourth quarter? If they can, then they're going to milk that. They're going to outdo the Chiefs, who love to milk the clock in the second half and make sure you don't have a chance to get back. Philadelphia has been great at that all year long. Can they outdo what Kansas City loves to do to teams in the second half? I think they can.
5 of our last 6 Super Bowls have hit the under of what the pregame total was. The public probably squirms hearing such a thing. The only over in the last 6 seasons was Super Bowl 57 between the Eagles and the Chiefs. And we saw a ton of points, 38, 35, 73 combined points between the two teams over a total that closed around 51 and a hook. To Joe's point, we saw 38 points in the opening half. The Eagles had a 10-point lead, 24-14. The Chiefs rallied and won a single-score game, as they often do. Joe, I don't think we see 70-plus points this time. I'm not even sure we see 55-plus points this time around between KC and Philadelphia. But I don't think necessarily we also see 17-13 in a true defensive slugfest. I do think both teams will approach their team totals and get close to it, which means I don't think I have a great edge in betting the under. We'll find other areas, of course, to bet throughout Super Bowl week. Let me ask you one final question in terms of the total. Our next segment together, we'll compare those positions. We'll talk about the individuals and look at the updated numbers in the player prop categories. From the total perspective, Joe, can both teams win if the game trends to an over? Can both teams win if the game stays under? Or does that better suit, in either of those two scenarios, one of these two sides?
Well, we certainly know that both of these teams are capable of winning slugfest as well as low-scoring affairs here, and I would not shock me. We know, unlike a couple of years ago, these are not the same offenses. They are built differently. For Philadelphia, it's all about Saquon Barkley and a running game. A couple of years ago, it was all about the explosive passing game. The interesting thing to me is Kansas City has no running game, Ben. Zero. Nothing they can rely upon, which means dink and dunk is coming here. I think, I don't know that it favors either way, an under or an over. I think it's who makes the fewest mistakes.
Let's talk about those edges in each and every category around those depth charts next. Super Bowl week live right here on the early line. Let's dive through the prop markets now, see where those numbers have shifted, if at all, and compare those position groups and the individuals that will dictate the outcome come Super Bowl Sunday, just 6 days away in New Orleans. Of course, Joe, we start at the quarterback position. I think it's pretty fair to say the Chiefs have that discernible edge in the quarterback spot based on pedigree and perhaps even present performance between Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. But in Super Bowl 57, despite Mahomes and the Chiefs coming out on top, it was Hurts that outdueled Mahomes and had a generational and historic performance. When you look at that QB comparison that we have for Super Bowl 59, where do you think those best bets might be, or where the advantages could be in terms of that matchup?
Well, yeah, we talked about it earlier, Ben. We've got a couple of interesting things at play that correlate, right? Number one, if the Chiefs defense sells out to stop Saquon, if that's their priority is to anybody but Saquon, well, then we're looking at a Jalen Hurts and passing game here that with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith have to show up and they have to show out. Now, we did see for the first couple of playoff games, right? 11 of 18 is what A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith were. 11 catches, 18 attempts, just 100 yards combined. Different story, though, in that championship game, right? 10 of 12 for $141. If you think Saquon is going to do the focus of Kansas City defense, well, then Jalen Hurts has got to go over his passing yards. Wouldn't shock me if he goes over his rushing yards. And the passing TDs also play to the over. But if you think it's going to be, Gad, Saquon, let's see if you can beat our front seven. And they are going to lock down those wide receivers and force Saquon Barkley to try to beat him single-handedly. Well, then a lot of those numbers, Ben, I'm not comfortable thinking Jalen Hurts is going over 210 and a half yards. And conversely, Patrick Mahomes only runs in the Super Bowl, Ben. That's the bottom line. His rushing prop, 29 and a half. He's rushed for 44 in the last couple. Why? Yeah. Because he saves it all up for this game. He has no problem using his legs here, which makes that rushing prop also extremely profitable to me at 29 and a half yards.
And that's the number of these two QBs that has actually moved. It was 28.5 at open early last week, now up by a yard. Double-digit carries in 46 yards and multiple rushing touchdowns for Mahomes in that AFC Championship game against Buffalo. Last two times these two teams played, both quarterbacks utilizing their athleticism. Mahomes, 44 yards on the ground. Hurts was Philly's leading rusher, 15 carries for 70 yards. Doesn't have to be the leading rusher now. That is Saquon Barkley. And we know what the odds expectation is for the best running back in the National Football League. 21.5, his attempts prop. His rushing yards number slightly down from where it was last week. 112 and a hook, but still 110 and a half. Joe, what do you think that KC defensive mentality is going to be? And can they actually slow down Saquon or at least hope to contain him?
I think they just hold. I don't think they're going to sell out to stop him. I think what they want is to make sure he's not busting off the 65, 70, 75-yard untouched touchdown runs on basic handoffs and basic stretch plays. I think that's what the Chiefs' focus is going to be. And don't forget, the Chiefs have gone 18 straight games without allowing a 100-yard rusher. So something has got to give in this game. I don't know that they're going to have to do anything more. That's how they're built. You don't rush for 100 yards against this team, mostly because you're trailing and you don't have much of a choice but to throw the ball. So I don't know that they're going to do anything extra outside of making sure he doesn't bust a big one for 70, 75, 80-yard touchdowns to the house.
Which is basically what he has done each and every game, each and every week for Philadelphia. 7 60-plus yard rushing touchdowns this year for Barkley. The most we have ever seen in a single season. What?
Keep in mind, Sunday is Barkley's birthday. Just saying.
It is. Yeah. And Cooper Jean for what it's worth.
Yes,
Saquon
exactly.
Barkley, better price than Jalen Hurts to win Super Bowl 59 MVP. Maybe to celebrate his B-Day, not only with a Lombardi, but an MVP award as well. Mahomes still remains the favorite. Hour number 3, our third and final, is up next.